Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of River Bear. Today we're going to talk really briefly on brakes. We're also trying out a new lens that I purchased for my camera. It's a wide angle lens, so you're getting to see a little bit more of the room that we're working in, and maybe not so much close-ups of me, but I'll add in the close-ups. So experimenting both with the lens and also talking a little bit about brakes. So in this case, the kit that I bought from Bearhawk, they offered these sets of brakes, which came from Airframes Alaska. Now, most people when they're building the kits actually I think go with Cleveland brakes, but in this case, Bearhawk wasn't able to get those brakes due to supply chain issues. So they offered me these as an alternative. And what I found is, not knowing a whole lot about brakes, these are very, very, very nice. And they build these up in Alaska for bush planes, so it should fit very nicely with this, and also fit very nicely with the bush plane motif that I'm putting together here. And if it's good enough for Alaska, it's got to be good for the water down here in the Maryland area. Now the other thing is that when you mount this, you put this mounting plate on here, and this comes apart. This is actually two halves. So you can see here there are these 4 bolts here. We'll do a close-up here real quick. So we do have these bolts here, 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 and here. Now these bolts I'll take out. These 2 slides or cylinders will stay in place with these captured bolt here and here. And then this will sit onto the brake mounting plate here, like so. Then I'll put the wheel on, and then I will reattach this piece here around the brake disc. Now the brake disc on here is mounted on this tire, and again, these are a set of salvaged tires that I got at the local aircraft facility where they train. And as you can see, you know, kind of scuffed up from use with students, but for my purpose, which is basically working on this and rolling it around, these are great. So these are temporary. They also gave me some inner tubes, so that was nice of them. So I was able to put this all together. But here's the aluminum brake disc. Now this aluminum brake disc, like I said, the caliper mechanism will encapsulate this, and this will all go on. Now I had already repacked these bearings with new grease, so these are all set to go once I get that on there. And that's what we'll be working on now, is we'll get this actually on here. I'll include some close-up pictures of us doing that, and you'll get to see this all go together and understand how it goes together. I hopefully will help the next person who's doing this understand really fast how this goes together. There won't be any research for you at all, because you can just watch this and see how we're going to put this together. So again, here we go. Hi everyone, I thought I'd pause here real quickly. What I've done now is I've taken the first of the 2 bolts off that were holding this side of the brake pad in place. And I needed to remove these in order to get the wheel on and get this around the disc. So as you can see here on these, as we go up close, again you see these 2 rods that will slide back and forth through that bushing plate. You can see now the puck here, and you see the brand new brake pad that I have here. And here it is, the other one that's still in place here. So here's the 2 bolts that are coming through from the far side that come through here. And on the other side you can see that I just need to take these 2 off. And then this should all go together nicely and neatly with the aluminum brake disc sitting right up in here, and then these going back into place and holding this in place. The other thing I should mention is that you might have noticed that for me, I'm mounting these brakes facing forward. I've read a lot of different things on this, and different people have different opinions on it, but what I decided was that it would face forward, so that if I was landing in a rough field or bushy conditions, that these would be protected a little bit more, and we wouldn't get as much debris into the calipers themselves. The other thing that I decided in doing all this was that I would mount them straight up and down with the aircraft when it was level in flight. So before I showed you that I had this leveled out when I put on those plates, and now what I've done is I mounted this so that it's all squared up. And again, I've used 4 bolts to hold that together, and that plate's really not going anywhere at this point. So what I'm going to do next is take off the other pad, and then I should be ready to install. Sorry about the hiccups, but we keep recording here. We don't stop for that kind of thing. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get that off, and then we're gonna get this wheel on. So stand by. Hello again, everyone. Just again, another little update as we're moving forward here. So what I've done now is I have taken off this piece here. So here's a close-up of the brake pad mechanism. This obviously goes right onto these two little rods here and slides back and forth. Again, I don't know all the technical names, so if you're looking for somebody to give you the technical names of everything in here, I'm the wrong person. But here we have the brake pad mechanism. Underneath here we have the dual pucks, and then we have the assembly. This here is again where the brake line will connect up here on top. And these two rods with this side of the brake pad assembly will slide into here very nicely and go onto that mounting plate. And again, from Airframes Alaska, very nice looking assembly. I'm not an expert in terms of what the quality of this is. The online reviews have been very positive on this. Again, they're not sponsoring me. They're not paying any money. I bought this with the Bearhawk kit. But this is a very nice looking set of brakes, so much better than on my aircraft that I had before, my Bonanza. So I like the look of these, nice, new and clean. And again, I'll have this fitting facing up so that the lines that I'm going to run can run up the airframe here later on this side. But this looks very good. So I've been working on this axle now for a bit, and really the whole job was to get this thing onto its landing gear so that I could roll it around a little bit here in the workshop. But it seems like I've run into one challenge after another. The first challenge I had was getting this plate here mounted, and that wasn't a big deal. That was just a matter of finding the right hardware, connecting the right hardware up, and making sure that it all worked before I started on the other side, which I'll start once I know that I'm successful on this. Then I assembled the wheels before and had them all ready to go, thinking that I could polish up this axle and then I would slide it right on and everything would fit. Well, kind of an ongoing saga here. It turns out that the bearings that were provided with these wheels, and these wheels came from Alaskan bush wheels, Alaskan airframes, these didn't slide over the axles as I expected. So I did some measurements using a set of calipers. Here's the calipers that I ended up using. The first that I had were highly inaccurate, so I got some really good ones. And we measured this up, and we found that both the axle and the bearing interior diameter were 1.5 inch, identical. Now obviously you can't slide a 1.5 inch bearing over 1.5 inch axle because there's no room for it, no play. So after some discussion with Bearhawk, what they advised to do was sand this down. They called it the shoe polishing effect. Take some sandpaper. In this case, I used the medium grit to start out with, and here it is. So take some of this and sand down this axle, and then the bearing would slide over. Although I've made some progress doing that, it's taken a lot longer than they kind of hinted that it would. They said it would be rather quick. What I've found so far is about 30 minutes into the shoe polishing effect by hand. I'm just not making the progress on this. I'm still not getting it so that the bearing will slide over easier. The bearing will now go on, and it slides at least on over the threads, but it still stops. At the same time, I found that one of the bearing races wasn't to the specifications that I wanted. Actually, the outer race had an indentation in it. This may have been caused by shipping, it may have been caused by me sliding this on and off again. So I did order another bearing, and I bought the ones off of Aircraft Spruce, which are Teminkin brand. And I wanted to compare these bearings to the Chinese bearings that were provided with me from Alaskan Airframes. And so here today I received this brand new bearing assembly, and I have measured it, and it is also interior diameter of 1.5. Exterior widths are all the same. So basically this is an identical bearing to the Chinese bearing, except for this one, of course, is made by Teminkin, which is a more well-known manufacturer of these, and again, aviation supply. And these are made in Mexico, not in China. Not that that makes much of a difference in this case. So again, trying this on, I found that again, it slides over now with the sanding over the threads, and then it becomes hung up at the beginning of the axle entry. So I now know that the axle was the problem for sure. I knew that kind of already, but now I'm doubly certain that the issue here is that the axle hasn't been ground down to the right diameter in order to support these bearings. So what I have here is, in layman's terms, is a non-standard axle. And that's exactly what Alaskan Airframes told Bearhawk when they called them and talked to them. So now what we need to do is we need to see how we can get this axle polished down even further so that the bearings will actually fit. Again, now that the threads are sliding over the thread area of the axle easily, I need to go ahead and I need to keep doing that. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to try something different here because the shoe polish method is not working very well for me. So believe it or not, there's a tool for every purpose. So went on Amazon and I found a tool that is basically made for polishing pipes, sanding pipes. And so I'm going to try that. So after this brief break we're going to take here, then we'll start going through the process of basically reviewing that tool and seeing it all works. Now supposedly this tool should fit nicely with my Milwaukee right angle grinder. That's what it says online. We'll find out. We'll go through all that. But hopefully it does, because I'm telling you that another hour or two of sanding this by hand with emery cloth is not what I want to be doing with my time. It's just too much. And hopefully Bearhawk will start running these down a little bit closer for future Bearhawk owners, so that these bearings slide on over the axle easily and it goes on there nicely. I am a little bit concerned that I don't get this out of round. I obviously don't want a ruined axle either. So, perfect world, I would get a new landing strut on the right and left that actually were the right size and that the bearings fit on nicely. Hopefully Bearhawk has got a go, no-go gauge now for this and make sure that these bearings do go on before they ship them. But I will suffer through, I will sally forth, and hopefully I will get this working the way I want it to work. And you can come along. Like I said, this video is going to be about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So right now, the ugly part about it is that I need to get this axle into the right diameter to accept the bearings. And hopefully that's not too much more work. So as I said, this axle on this side still needs to be brought down to the right dimension. I brought over my check tool now, which is the actual bearing that came from Alaskan Airframes, and I have this axle. As I showed you before, this bearing does not fit over this right now. So we're gonna have to bring this down, and I'll show you how this tool works. So really, we have this nice flexible structure. I have it set so that I can go all the way around the axle, because I do want it to be even. And really, we have my safety glasses on here. I will turn this on. It's going to get noisy for a minute, so we'll probably mute it in the actual video. But let's go ahead and get this sanded down to the right dimensions. So everyone, as I was saying just a moment ago, I needed to finish up with the emery cloth, first with a medium and then a fine, getting the axle back polished the way I liked it. And then I put back together the wheel assembly, putting the bearings and everything back in place so that I could test fit the wheel and test fit the caliper. And as you can see, it all goes on nicely now and slides off and on easily. Before, I couldn't get this wheel on even if I pounded on it, which obviously is not the right thing to be doing, is pounding against the bearing. Now it slides on nice and easily, so I feel like this is a success. I feel like the tool that I ended up using really cut down the work, but again, it takes a very specific right angle grinder to do that, that being the Makita. All the other brands did not work for me, so if you buy that one off of the online retailer, just know that you're gonna also need to plan on borrowing a friend's Makita 4.5-inch right angle plug-in grinder, or go in and buying one at a big box. But all that goes on there nicely. So I do need to do a little bit of priming and touching up. Like I said before, final paint I'll do later, but this is all ready to go and I'm all set. And so I will now clean up the other side, and I'll get that landing gear, that tire on the landing gear strut, and we should turn this into a wheelbarrow in no time at all. And then we can start talking about the tail wheel, because the tail wheel, I'm going a different direction, and I kind of like to go through what I'm doing there. And if you have any comments or you have anything to say about how I'm doing that, by all means add that in the comment section below. You know, very thick skin, anything you say, positive or negative, more than willing to hear it. So this is where we are now, and I feel like we're finally making progress again after you know, a bit of a fit and stop and start as we were going through this situation with the axles. So again, emery cloth, even with a coarse emery cloth, it can take a very long time to bring this down to size. Highly recommend getting something that's faster. Doesn't necessarily have to be that, but that's how I solve this problem. So primer and grease, and we're back in business.